I learned quite a bit today, and I encourage you to go to Leadership Institute. We're going to be posting snippets of some of the talks from there. Technically, we've got the Facebook Live of her, but it's going to be pretty lengthy. So we're going to try and snippet it down into segments so people can watch segments over and over. But that is absolutely critical. And like I said, I just can't encourage you enough to make sure that you're reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, anything by Florence Littauer, anything by John Maxwell, Michael Gerber. Those are going to be classics that you have to read when you're meeting with legislators, because I promise you most of them, if they're senior legislators, they've read all those books. I do want to once again thank Jeff Miller with Flat Rate Legal Services. Jeff has been a warrior, and I get calls periodically from people, as you can imagine, in St. Louis. Who do you know? Who do I know? And I tell them flat out, you can't find a better person to represent you than someone who's passionate about this issue, because he went through it. Somebody else that's not putting other attorneys down, but they may be able to represent you, but their heart's not in it the way Jeff is, because he's been through it, and he's fought for us for 4.5 years. So I sure hope if you get a referral from St. Louis, I sure hope you, and it doesn't have to be St. Louis, it could be anywhere within, he may be willing, he'll have to just figure whether it's worth his while. But if you get something from Jefferson County, St. Charles, even Columbia, Missouri, he may consider taking out. It's worth a call. If you know anybody within St. Louis, and you're in Illinois too, aren't you? Or not? Yeah, so anywhere within a 3-hour radius, at least give him a call just to say, hey, do you do this? And if not, maybe he can. And also the other thing is, even if he doesn't know, or even if he can't do it, he may know somebody, and that helps him score some brownie points with another attorney. If he gets an attorney, say, in Columbia, Missouri, that he didn't want to take the case, but if he feeds somebody to Columbia, that may score him brownie points because they're going to feed him a referral. So you can help him out, even if it's within a 3-hour radius or so. Real quick, I want to sort of wrap up with a couple of closing thoughts of really trying to create the pull. As Paul was saying, legislators are bombarded by everybody and their brother trying to convey a message. And in every single state, there's only a handful of people, aside from Texas. Texas is the only state that, as I made the 29-city tour, we did get a lot of people. I mean, I think the one day I was there, we had 25 people at the Capitol with us. And that's the largest of any state that's out there. Most states, you're lucky if in any given day, you're going to have more than 4 or 5 people going to the Capitol. For most states, it's going to be about 2 or 3 people that go to the Capitol on a regular basis, and that's it. And regular basis, I'm talking maybe once a month, twice a month. If you really got somebody gung-ho, once a week. But very rare you're going to get somebody that can go every single week. How can you stand out to a legislator if you're by yourself going once a week or once a month to the Capitol when they have people calling them from Second Amendment issues that are having 150 people show up in the rotunda for a rally? You can't compete. How do you compete when we have 3 people showing up at a Capitol and the news is talking about another issue? So we need to be thinking of creative ways. And I came up with a list of a couple of ideas for you to think about that you need to be doing, because my goal, as I've always said, I don't want to be the person. I want to help you to be the people in your state. My goal is for Charles to duplicate what I'm doing at the national level within the state of Georgia. Now, we keep in contact. Unfortunately, in the shared parenting community, I don't know why, but everybody thinks we need to be in competition with other groups. That is going to be the absolute kiss of death. You cannot do that. Even groups you hate. Some of you know there was a group that I had an event scheduled in March in Dallas, and we put a lot of time, effort, and energy into that. And unbeknownst to me, there was another organization that canceled our event, which I still don't understand. How can somebody cancel our event? But they started putting messages out on Facebook, oh, the AFESP event's been canceled. They had a conference call that they told everybody I was going to be on, but I had never been invited. They said, we don't know where he is, but this is what we've been thinking. It'll be canceled. That night, this other group makes an announcement. They're going to start a national tour starting in Dallas, Texas. And obviously, as you can imagine, I was pretty frustrated. I already bought plane tickets. I had speakers lined up. We had 9. Wendy Perry had spent a lot of time putting that event together. We had a facility rented. We had hotel rooms rented. We had to put a lot of time and effort and energy. The challenge is, if I fought back at that organization, who wins? Nobody, because at some point in time, we're going to need all the groups for a call to action, even if you hate the other group. There's books out there on EQ, emotional quotient. You've got to make sure that you keep your emotions in check. I remember my uncle ended up, he started out, his dad stole his car when he was 16 years old, and my grandpa, who I never met, matter of fact, we never talked about him, but apparently when my uncle was 16 years old, he had saved up to buy his first car, and his own father stole that car and moved to Florida, and the family never heard from him again. And so my uncle literally went from absolutely nothing, grew up on Lindenwood Avenue, for those of you here in St. Louis, ended up creating storage masters across the country. It was worth something like $21 million when he died. But I got a chance to mentor with him a few times before he died, and he told me one thing he used to do. Before he would hire an employee, a key employee, he would take them to dinner, and he would go to the restaurant ahead of time, and he would get a waiter or waitress and pay him $200 and say, look, I need you to do me a favor. I want you to spill water on the person who I'm meeting with at some point during dinner, and I want you to mess something up about their meal. And he said, I know it's going to be embarrassing for you, but here's $200 for your trouble. This is probably 20 years ago. But the reason he did that, he wanted to see what would tick them off. What does it take to set somebody off? If somebody would get ticked off at water being spilled at them, that's not the person he wanted to hire. He wanted somebody that, it doesn't matter if bullets are flying at you, you still keep a smile. Hey, I'm so sorry that happened to you, but boy, I'm sure glad you're still here at the restaurant, or whatever. But that's what he would end up doing. And literally, if somebody blew up and got mad, or even remotely said anything offensive to the waitress, that person was out immediately. Hands down, they were gone. And you've got to get to that point where it doesn't matter what somebody does to tick you off. You just keep right on going, because I promise you, at some point, we're going to need all of us. We're working on Title 40 changes. It will not happen unless we're all united. So there's going to be groups that tick you off. Doesn't matter. I'll tell you what, the door's still open for me to meet even with that group. Even though from what I heard, they were telling people not to come to here. Still doesn't matter, though. My door's always open to them. Never will I send them a message saying, you mother, I'll never work with you again. That's not going to help us out in the long run. So, I'm sorry? Exactly. Yeah, the goal is you got to ask yourself, are you trying to win the battle, or are you trying to win the war? My battle isn't with that organization. My battle is with the Bar Association, with Title 4D, and it's fighting for kids. It's not fighting them. But a couple of ideas that you want to keep in mind. Number one, you're going to need databases within your states. You have got to identify a constituent from every single state rep's district and every one of your Senate districts. Because as several people said, I think Paul was the main one that said it, I forget who it was, but somebody mentioned about the fact, legislators want to hear from people in their own district. Most of you know when I go to D.C., I bring a Gina, I bring a John, I bring a Charles. Why am I bringing those people? They don't want to hear from Mark Ludwig. They want to know, is this an issue from Michigan? Is this an issue from Arkansas? Is this an issue from Texas? And so we bring people there, and so they sort of set the table. Hey, I'm a constituent. We've got an issue affecting us in Texas, but Mark knows a little bit more about that issue, so I'm going to let him talk to you. But I would not get the time of day without somebody from Texas being there with me and helping to open the door. But then that's going to come back to you, too, down the road. But the point I'm making is you've got to have somebody at the state level in every one of your districts so that when you need to, when you've got a vote coming up, if you've got somebody who's wishy-washy and you're not sure how they're going to vote, you don't want to be the one to call them. You want their constituent. And make sure everybody in your teams, like I said, my goal is not just to teach you. I want to teach you to teach. I want you to be the leaders in your state. So when you're calling your people, if they call their legislator, the opening words are always, I'm your constituent. Hey, I live in your district. That should always be your opening, but the key is to do that, you need people in every district so you can have them calling the legislator. So you've got to make sure, yeah.
How do we find those people?
Good, and it's hard.
We have 189 counties in Georgia. That's a lot of counties.
And it's going to be hard. It almost seems like an impossible task. What you're going to have to do, and that's why I said it's all sales. It's sales and marketing. That's why I encourage people, get books like E-Myths by Michael Gerber. Buy books by John Maxwell. Buy books by Peter Senge. These are geniuses in the business world. If they can do what they did for billion-dollar companies, if we can take the principles and apply those principles to what we do, we'd be unstoppable. But a couple of ideas for you, just to give you some direct ideas. Number one, your Facebook page is going to be sort of the opening of the funnel. You need to be following up. People who are making comments on your page, send them a private message. Hey, do you live in Georgia? What district do you live in? Do you know who your state rep is? Do you know who your... Every time somebody, if they take the time to make a comment, follow up. Now, a couple of caveats to that. Depends on how they word their comment, okay? If their comment is laced with all kinds of F-bombs, you don't want them going to the Capitol because they're going to score against you. But so make sure you're careful about it and really watch. Because some people will put a couple of decent comments and they'll become semi-regular commenters. But I'll just tell you, in my mind, anybody who ever uses an F-bomb in a comment thread or any kind of four-letter word, I know we're all mad. I know we're all upset. I just can't risk legislation being killed because somebody doesn't know how to control their words when they articulate their message. But as long as they're positive, every message on, because do you guys have your own page yet for Georgia? Okay, yeah, so any message that you put on your Facebook page, one of you guys needs to follow up with that. Send a private message to that person, hey, what district do you live in? Same way on my pages, when I do my Facebook Lives, if you watch, if you notice anybody from Georgia come on, if you don't even if you do recognize any name that says they're from Georgia, you need to send a private message to that person. Hey, I saw you commented on Mark's Facebook Live the other night. I noticed you made a comment you were from Georgia. What district are you in? But you're just any way that you can to try and find out. And it'll take some time. It's not like this is going to happen in 6 weeks. Matter of fact, I doubt very seriously early on you'll be able to get even remotely half of the districts. But your ultimate goal over a couple of years is to get at least one in every single state rep. Now, the Senate districts are easier because they're, a lot smaller numbers because the districts are so much bigger. But you've got to develop that database. That is your window to really getting things. Because like I said, if you get somebody wishy-washy, you want their constituents. Yeah.
Put it in the database unless you get a spreadsheet.
Well,
Yeah.
it's organizing the data is not the problem, it's getting the contacts.
Exactly.
What about actually spending time and going to some of these different House districts, the courthouses, and literally finding people in person?
Yeah, matter of fact, because a couple of those ideas are going to come down too that I have, which will hopefully tie in. But another idea is that some of you know I've got these postcards that we made up. It was for a CPAC event, but somebody else ended up doing something to sabotage that effort. But we have postcards made up that has the benefits of equal shared parenting and the challenges with Title 4D. And they're postcard size because when Corona isn't happening, most grocery stores have bulletin boards, most coffee shops have bulletin boards. I would come up with some kind of the key is, like she said, don't come up with a dissertation. You've got to get your message down to 3 one-sentence bullet points on a postcard that can convey the heart of what we do, put it on bullet boards, and you're not going to get a lot, but you'd be surprised. Every once in a while, you'll get somebody who looks at it and they're like, oh my gosh, that's me. Hey, they're going to take that postcard and give you a call. But you need to come up with something like that. You do need to organize, and I'll talk in a second. Jesse West is probably the best in the country at organizing community events. I'll get to that in a second, but that's definitely going to be one you'll want to pay attention to. Okay, so database. Somehow you've got to be able to develop a database. I'll probably do a Facebook Live just on that. It's just I've got a bunch of other points, and I don't want to go too long. Always feel free to contact me, though, if you want more information afterwards. For those of you that don't know my number, 314-814, yeah, 314-814-0977. I just ask always send me a text first. I really do. I think most of you know I'm an admin on 124 different Facebook pages. This year I helped consult with 9 different political campaigns here in the St. Louis area. Plus all the other organizations. Not that I'm better than anyone else, but there is no way for me to keep up like with emails. Every once in a while I get people, they'll get mad at me. I sent you an email and I didn't get an answer. I'm like, I don't know if anybody's seen, some of you have seen my emails. Literally in an average day I'll get 1,500 emails on my personal email account. There is no way without an assistant I could read all those. There's just no way. I can't even read all the titles. So send me a text message and just say, hey, make sure you always put your name. Hey, this is so-and-so. I met you at the summit. Do you have 5 minutes for a phone call? I need to ask you a question. And somehow I'll figure out a time where I can get you in. Okay, next thing, demographic teams. This is critical. Not only just for your hearing, but you need on your team, you've got to seek people out from different demographic areas to show your legislators. This isn't just, we don't want everybody looking like me. First off, nobody would look like me. But you want demographic. You need women. You need, a stepmom that can talk about, hey, I tell you what, I watched my husband with his son, and I see him crying at night because he can't, won't be able to see his son until a week from Friday. That can articulate the message. That's right, Gina can do that. So we have two of them in here that can do that. So like stepmoms are powerful testimonials. Some may not want to speak, so we don't want to push you into public speaking here, but that's a powerful person. One of the most powerful of all is adult children who can articulate the message. Be very careful when using children, though. If you'll notice, never do I use Levi. I talk about, different things that we do and everything, but the worst thing you could do is have a 10-year-old kid meeting with a legislator. If I'm a legislator, I would be ticked off. You're politicizing your own son, and more importantly, that's information that a child shouldn't have to deal with that kind of stress. Levi does not know. If you'll notice, I make him leave the room. Anytime there's stories or something, Gina will tell you, when I went down to Arkansas to testify, Levi to this day does not know that there were 204 days that he wasn't with me. Levi has no idea all the stuff. He thinks that I'm just doing this because of all of you. He literally has, now he's 10, so he's starting to figure some of it out. He's not stupid. But he literally, I do not tell my story ever in front of Levi. Just because a 10-year-old child cannot handle that. That's what creates the drug abuse and stuff like that. But an adult child, somebody 15, 16, 17, that is powerful. And as Jeremy can tell you, the most powerful testimonial we've ever had in the history of Missouri was by a 15, 16-year-old girl. That resonates because, as we said, you can give all the facts, figures, details, statistics, charts that you want to a legislator. But you have a 16-year-old girl crying, saying, I missed out on 3 years of my dad. I thought he hated me. I thought he wanted nothing to do with me. I thought that was why he only wanted to see me every other weekend. I didn't realize he'd been fighting to try and see me during all that period of time. That's powerful. So you need to identify children that are mature enough that it won't hurt them in their growth at the age level that they're at. Even more powerful, somebody in their 20s or 30s. And it's always more powerful, whether we like it or not. A woman is more persuasive than a man in one of those testimonies. But if you can get a female in their 20s or 30s, some of you know one of my best friends from high school that I remember, I watched this happen. Her dad taught her how to ride a bike. Her dad was out playing catch with her every night after work. By the time she was 12, she hated her dad so much you couldn't even mention his name. Because the mom and dad divorced when she was 9. The mom started programming her and brainwashing her. Literally got her to the point where she literally, if you would have asked her when she was 20 years old, do you have any good memories of your dad? None at all. She said, not a single one. By the time I was in my 20s, I couldn't think of anything good that I ever had. I didn't remember the bike riding, any of it, because of the psychological brainwashing. She started having dreams when she was in her 30s of her dad teaching her how to ride a bike. So I don't know why I get so emotional. This is right there. But of her dad teaching her how to ride a bike, of her dad playing catch. And she said they were happening all the time. And she said, I just really felt this was real. This wasn't just a dream. And she said she ended up tracking her dad down, showed up at his house one day, and he pulled out a banker's box of return to sender cards, thank you cards, birthday cards. That's a powerful story. And, for her to be able to say, hey, I lost 20 years with my dad, but I have another one who's going to be here tonight, actually. I don't know if she's going to, I'm hoping she will testify us for some time. But same thing. She lost a relationship with her dad. By the time she got it back, he died of cancer. And she said, not only did I lose 20 years of my dad's life, he's gone now. I can never recoup that time. So that's a powerful one. Children. Attorneys. Man, is it ever powerful to have a Jeff Miller there. Because you'll get attorneys everybody knows, oh, it's fine in our state. It's fine in our state. Man, you get an attorney that can say, hey, I'm in the courtrooms. It's not fine. Mental health professionals. Military. I'm telling you, Gina can tell you, you go to Washington, D.C., I don't care Republican or Democrat, you get a military person to show up with you, they want to know what you have to say. That is your ace in the hole in every one of your states. Get military people. I don't know if they're allowed to show up in their uniform or not. They may not be able to, but if they could, that would be powerful. But if not, if they have some kind of insignia letting people know that they're with the military. A policeman, a fire police person, because I know there's one, but somebody with the police, the fire districts. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I remember hearing about Cash Jackson. He wasn't, his judge told him to stop coming in within his uniform and to court.
Yeah, well, that's a key point. Big difference between meeting with a judge versus going to legislators. Very, very different. So, like I said, I don't know whether they're allowed to, but yeah, with a judge, judges are just, you're not going to sway a judge. That's why we're trying to fight it in the legislature. So just as you understand, too, the stuff that we're talking to you about is meeting with legislators, which will be totally different than meeting with your judge. And Jeff can articulate a lot better the reasoning behind that. But, yeah, it'll be a totally different scenario. But military people, like I said, when you're meeting with legislators, that'll carry weight. Anybody with the police, the fire district, or a sheriff, especially if you can get them to testify about all the times they showed up for false allegations, that somebody wanted to press charges that they were abused, and they saw the scene and they could tell it was the projection of the one who was the one claiming that abuse took place. Judges, that's a powerful one. Jeremy did a great job of getting judges in Missouri to testify. Grandparents. Who in the world doesn't have sympathy for a grandparent who can't see their own grandkids? And that's an edge that most people don't think of. Teachers. A lot of teachers talking about if you can get a teacher that can articulate, hey, you know, so-and-so is doing great until the divorce, and then they stopped being able to see one of the parents, and I started seeing their grades dip. I started seeing behavioral problems. There's a lot of teachers that can articulate that message and can talk about the problems they see between parents. Cross coalitions. You need to develop relationships with people, and I'm a conservative, so I give you the conservative examples, but pro-life people, homeschoolers, Second Amendment people, those are great advocates. Texas, man, has some great advocates. The homeschool industry is just, they're like 100% behind us down in Texas. Let's see. So I think it goes, but like I say, demographic teams you need to create. Community events. I'll get to Jesse now. This is something that is huge because the opposition has created the narrative of a bunch of angry dads that probably shouldn't be dads. Has anybody ever, hopefully you're all following Dads Can Too. If not, go on that page. It's hard to create an image of an angry dad when they see kids smiling, watching a basketball game of the Harlem Wizards, and everybody, that doesn't create the image that they're trying to convey. When they see people having fun in a parade. So community events are raising awareness. The challenge is we tend to speak to ourselves. Things aren't going to change until we get people who don't know about our issue, like a Paul Curtman, aware. You can't hit them head on, as Dena was saying. You hit them head on, they're going to run. Go the soft approach. You're just in a parade. Dads Can't Do. What's Dads Can't Do about? Wonder what that is, Ethel. Let's go look on that website. What's that Dads Can't Do all about? So a genius idea, and check with Jesse. He can give you ideas. Call to action campaigns. You need to make sure that you've got a process ready. You only have 3 call to actions a year that you're going to be able to do on average. By the time you've done 3, you've burned people out you're not going to get them to. So you don't want to get a letter writing campaign where you're trying to get everybody to write a letter every single week. You're going to have 3 times. So strategically, you need to figure out in your state, when do you need it? Normally, it's right before a committee meeting or right before a floor vote. But strategize ahead of time in your state, when do you want those 3 call to actions, and how do you need to do it? Some of you have heard me. I was going to try and get Alex to come here today. But one of the best examples I can ever think, my friend Alex Saltzman. She works on Second Amendment issues here in Missouri. And she had a bill that she was trying to get defeated because it had some amendments added on to it. She did a Facebook Live and put an email out to her database. The next day, there were 22,000 emails that came in for legislators. Now, if you're a legislator, who do you think you're listening to? 3 people showing up at the Capitol? Or 22,000 people from the state of Missouri from every district around the place? That bill got defeated just like that. So and that's going to take time. We're not going to be able to get 22,000 people to send an email. But we need to have miniature versions of that. I would encourage everybody to have an equal shared parenting day at the Capitol, strategically timed. But you better make sure you control it. In the past, we didn't want to do that because in the past we had challenges. Michigan, Texas had some huge problems. Anytime you open something to a public event, you're always going to have some radical people show up. Okay, challenges, it's a fact of life. Realize legislators will give you a pass on a couple. I mean, the main thing you have to worry about is media, not necessarily legislators. But if you do it in the rotunda of your Capitol, most media doesn't show up at those type of events. But the legislators all know they go on. So you're safer in your own home state. Do an event in your rotunda. You don't actually want the media to show up at that particular one, just in case a radical shows up. Do, one or two of those until you realize, okay, everybody's in line, then you can invite the media to one. But the reason you want that is legislators have every issue doing those on a regular basis. And their attitude is, I see homeschoolers that have 100 people in our rotunda once a year. I see pro-lifers have. I see anti-pro-lifers have. I see Second Amendment people. I don't see these equal shared parenting people. All I see is a handful of people showing up at our Capitol. You need more people so they realize, oh man, this issue's taken off. We better sit up and pay attention to this. Let's see. Connections to the federal, and that's what I work on. That's why I said we try to partner. Almost every legislator, not all, but I would say 80% of legislators want to be a member of U.S. Congress. Almost invariably. They get into it and they want to start climbing the ladder. They probably will not make it to U.S. Congress without the support of whoever's in U.S. Congress. So most of them suck up to their member of Congress if they're in the same party, quite a bit. So if you can get your U.S. Congress member on board with us and supporting our cause, you'd be surprised how many people were neutral or even leaning negative, but they sure don't want to tick off their ticket to getting a chance to be the candidate for U.S. Congress. And all of a sudden, boom. So that's what I work on. That's why I'm always going to D.C., because I can open some doors at the federal level, and so it's a win-win. So if I go to D.C., Charles can talk to, Jody Heiss, and I meet with Jody. Charles can say, hey, I'm from Georgia. I meet with Jody. I talk more about the issue and say, hey, can you do me a favor? Charles needs some help back in Georgia. Now, all of a sudden, we have Jody Heiss helping Georgia, and I promise you, Jody Heiss, how many do we have here? 7 from Georgia? 8. Yeah, or 8, okay. So not in any way putting down people from Georgia, but who do you think has more control with legislators in Georgia? 1 Jody Heiss or 8 people here? I promise you, Jody Heiss can convert more Republicans because you're a red state. So you get somebody like that on your side, you just converted about 7 votes without ever having to talk to anybody. All they know is Jody's on board, and I'll tell you what, if I'm a Republican, I better care what he says. So, and the same thing on the Democrat side. So that's where it's a great edification process. Anytime I go to D.C., what I need you guys to do is edifying me, and then I turn around. If you watch my Facebook Lives, the reason I have a lot of credibility in D.C. is I edify Ed Martin all the time. I didn't really get my total start, but a lot of it was I was the umbrella holder at functions for Ed Martin. Ed Martin would have functions. Phyllis Schlafly would bring in, and some of you know, we brought in Ben Carson. We brought in Ted Cruz. We brought in Rick Perry. We had, in 2016, we had 12 of the Republican candidates at one event here in St. Louis at the Marriott Hotel. And I'm a servant at those events. That's why, too, I love to watch people come to an event. Some people come just to listen. Some people show up late and don't even listen. Some people come to make a sales pitch for whatever they're doing. And some people come to serve. And Ed Martin always taught me, he said, Mark, do me a favor. He said, you come to serve, and I promise you, it will be noticed. And so for years, I went to Phyllis Schlafly events, and there were times when it was raining, and there were people who, because they were wearing suits, they were too good to go out in the rain. But my attitude is, if we have somebody like a Ben Carson coming to town or a Ted Cruz, I would be proud to hold that umbrella for them so that when they walk in, they're ready to give a talk for our organization instead of worrying about, man, I'm dripping wet, it feels just gross and everything. If they're coming in to speak for our event, I want them glad they were there. I'll gladly get wet and hold a silly umbrella. But you know what? For doing that, I think some of you know, I built a relationship with Ben and Candy Carson that most people don't have, not realizing he was going to be the head of HUD. So make sure that you come to serve, but build those relationships. But that's what I did by serving Ed. Ed goes around D.C. and says, hey, I tell you what, you ought to see all the things this Mark Ludwig has done for Phyllis Schlafly Foundation. Man, he's held doors open. He's gotten there early to set up. He's been there late to clean up. He's been the driver before to take Ted Cruz to the airport for us, anything we need. And so now Ed builds the relationship, makes me sound like a rock star so that I can go in and meet with the legislator. But I always plant the seed back for Ed. whenever they say, boy, Ed sure talks highly of you, I need to re-edify Ed. And it's not like we're sucking up or anything like that, but it's a very sincere. I think the world of Ed Martin. So when I'm there, I don't overdo it, but I always, every single time, if Ed helped open a door, boy, I tell you what, I'm sure appreciative of Ed. He has been a gold mine to me. He's helped me out. He's mentored me. He's educated me. Why? Because I want him to be even more connected in D.C. to be able to open more doors. And Charles is probably one of the best examples of that. Boy, Mark does so much. Oh, it's not because I need the edification. It's by him edifying me, I have more credibility to re-edify him, and it comes right back to serve him. So partnering at the national level. Outside organizations, as Carnell was talking about. Churches, chambers, B&I groups, whatever you can do to get outside in the community, powerful, powerful. In Texas, where's our Texas guy? Oh, there's Texas. Genius thing that Dave was one of the main people that helped on this was getting our issue on the Republican platform. If anybody's ever watched the Phyllis Schlafly story that they did, it was basically a hatchet job they did, but I still watched it just because I thought, what she did, she basically single-handedly killed the ERA amendment. Literally, one woman killed the entire amendment for the country, and the reason because of our cause. She said exactly what was going to happen to men if that thing passed, and she was right, even though it didn't pass. She was right on everything that was going to end up happening. But how did she do it? She went and got her issue on the party platforms at the precinct level and the state level. What the challenge that we have is most people who follow politics aren't aware of it. That's why I always tell people to get involved in political candidates in your city. Because if you go to a political candidate campaign, it's not just the candidate you're wanting to meet. You're wanting to meet their grassroots people. Those grassroots people don't just know your candidate, they know 5 other legislators that they helped them get elected 5 years ago. And they can open doors for you. And so David did a genius job. David, how many delegates are there in Texas? Oh, he's chatting. I think it's 8,000 somewhere, I don't know. But you have 8,000 members of Texas now who know what equal shared parenting is because it's now on the Republican platform in Texas. And so now all of a sudden you've got an army of people, but not an army like we have that haven't been involved in legislation in their lives. He's got an army of people in Texas now that's what they've been doing for the last couple of decades. That is powerful. And then get involved politically. Now this is probably one of the most important parts of the thing, especially very timely with the elections going on. Okay, some of you, I think Darren was the only libertarian that we had. But most people are either leaning Republican or leaning Democrat. There's very few people now. There used to be a lot larger segment in the middle. Nowadays, it's kind of polarized. You get people going one direction or the other. Very critical. There is a huge difference, and please hear this, between bipartisan and nonpartisan. Every once I get people that are like, well, boy, I see you making all kinds of posts about Republican things. You ought to stop doing that. That is the stupidest thing I could ever hear somebody say. If you remove trying to get involved with one party and you're not involved in the other party, there's only 2 main parties. So if you're not involved in either party, how are you going to get a bill passed? It ain't going to happen. What you need is somebody like me on the Republican side and a LaShawn Ford on the Democrat side. So if you know, LaShawn Ford ran for mayor in Chicago. I helped him out. Okay, I did Facebook Lives for him. I did a conference call with some of his people, advising them. On that conference call, and I realized I'm like as hardcore conservative as you can get. And I'm on this conference call with some of the most liberal Chicago Democrats you could ever imagine. Now, I'm the only Republican on the call. They don't know I'm Republican. How do you think Republicans were talked about on that call? Oh my gosh. I've never seen more Republicans called more names. Was that the time for me to raise the Republican flag? No, let me tell you why you're wrong. Do you realize what that would have done? I would have blown a chance to help edify LaShawn Ford and build him, because I promise you what would have happened. His followers would have said, who's that guy? We're all on board with this, and if he says, oh, that's the shared parenting guy, do you realize they don't think bad of LaShawn, they think bad of the shared parenting movement. They didn't know me, so they're not going to think bad of me. They won't even remember my name. All they remember is that shared parenting guy was kind of a jerk. He was on our conference call, and every time we talked about how stupid Republicans were and how they're so greedy and everything like this, this stupid guy from St. Louis kept trying to talk about the fact that, we need to be thinking differently. Guys, I don't care if you disagree with somebody. You will never see me speak at a LaShawn Ford event and talk about Republican stuff. Never. Why? I want LaShawn Ford to not have to defend me to his personal friends. I don't want to have him having to defend Republican ideals to his friends. I want him focused, and I want his friends thinking, well, son of a gun, that's pretty impressive. A dorky guy from St. Louis is a Republican, but he still supports LaShawn. Okay, so realize that. You want to be active. And I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, I'll support you. If you're a Democrat, hey, you can see I've got a handful of Democrats on my page on Facebook that I built great personal friendships with. But I'll never comment on their personal page, okay? Do me a favor, okay? I don't know why, but everybody does this. And so I think everybody in here has done this before. Don't ever comment on somebody else's personal page if you're the opposite party. Why? At least if they're in shared parenting. Why? Because their followers are personal friends of theirs. To their friends, you're the outsider. The only thing they know about you is, oh, that's one of those shared parenting people. You need them edified by their friends. So Joe is matter of fact, he put a hilarious one up. What was the one you put? The streak. Okay, he put a post yesterday. He's like a hardcore Democrat. I mean, he's about twice as far Democrat as I am Republican. But he put a post yesterday that was just genius. That was Rudy Giuliani with the Just for Men. And it had these streaks going down the side. And there's some Republicans that are on there. How dare you? Are you kidding? It was funny. I thought it was hilarious. So I even put that in the comments, I think. That was a genius post. But, you got to have a sense of humor. And like I said, I not only do I not want to stifle him, I hope that Joe can build relationships in the Democrat Party. I don't want to stifle that. Okay, so like I said, just want to sort of wrap up. I want to make sure you guys had those ideas. And I'll be doing some more Facebook Lives, going through more details. If anybody can help out in the in-between section here with Trivia Night, unfortunately, we have a lot of matter of fact, our key people. We had Garrett Meese, who does our sound. We have Kaylin Morris, who is going to get all of our questions for the Trivia Night and all the designs for all the things. Normally, when you have gift cards, you make little designs for them that say, Charlie Gito's gift certificate. We have none of that right now. So this is going to be sort of a hick type of a thing. But if anybody can help out, if anybody can think of any type of a design that we can put for some of the gift cards, because you don't put the actual gift card on the table, but some kind of a sign, we need some help. I don't know if Darren and Scott need help moving some of the liquor in or anything like that, but if you guys can help